Hello and welcome to the Armenian News Network Groong Week in Review for July 24, 2024. Today we're talking with Arthur G. Martirosyan. Welcome back, Arthur. Good to have you on the show.
Welcome, Arthur.
Thank you for having me. Good to see you.
So for the past month or so, we have been asking all of our guests for their impressions as to what kind of a difference Trump would make, a potential Trump presidency would make on the policies of the United States on the Caucasus. But now as the field has started changing a little bit and it's narrowing down, we can probably ask for impressions about both of the candidates since Biden is not going to be continuing. How do you see the presidential race shaping up in the United States? And how will a potential Trump presidency or a Harris presidency shape up the policy of the United States for the Caucasus?
Well, I'm not a specialist on American politics, but I can tell you how things are seen from different centers in Eurasia when it comes to elections in the US and possible outcome. It's probably fair to say that Harris is going to be more of the same, more Biden. But I do not necessarily agree that it's going to be exactly the same because the policy of Biden's administration, especially on Ukraine, is running into some serious problems. I don't think Harris is going to go into the extreme measures that Trump might, and Trump may be driven mostly by financial considerations. The war is expensive. Why should the U.S. bear the burden? So he'll try to shift it on to Europeans. And I think the question is not so much about sharing the burden, even economic burden, which is about $5 billion US every month. And that's not counting the war effort, just to keep the country afloat. If I think in the beginning, some military experts or people who posed themselves as military experts, they thought that it's possible to win in this war, win militarily, beat Russia, throw it back to 91 borders. And that was often stated as a goal. Now, most Western analysts agree that it's impossible. And they fear that Ukraine might be losing more territories as the war progresses. And that may not be possible to change even by introducing new weapons to the theater, to the war theater. So it's time to find some kind of a closure to the war, but it's not going to be easy to do that, whether it's going to be Trump or whether that's going to be Harris, new administration. They're going to run into same problem.
So a quick question, Arthur, are these two candidates definitely going to inherit this war, or do you think that Biden is going to ramp it down before he leaves office?
It's impossible to quickly find a solution to the war because if the Ukrainian side and even the American side declare that they are ready to accept some of the conditions of the Russian side, the Russians are not going to be ready to stop because they are now gaining some momentum. And the goal is not so much territorial as the grinding the manpower of Ukraine, which is already very painful for Ukraine. They are not easy to replace the best military cadre. Even if you do run a mobilization and you numerically replace the losses, it's not easy to make the quality replacements. So why I'm talking about Ukraine, well, obviously I'm interested what implications it's going to have for Armenia. But I think we need to look at what they're going to be doing in Armenia through those lenses. I mean, because the major confrontation is not between Russia and Ukraine. It's between Russia and the West. And some of the areas where they have points of confrontation, and a new point of confrontation is also in the southern Caucasus. How are they going to make a deal? Is there going to be a new modus vivendi with Russia? It's not going to be easy to achieve one because the Russian demands are fairly stiff, and it will take probably not just new leader in the United States, but really a leader who thinks differently than Kamala Harris, who is pretty much a continuation of Biden, or even Trump. It will take a really new way of approaching the Russian dilemma, especially given China, the Middle East, and other problems that are escalating right now. I don't have a prognosis, obviously, on whether it's going to be Harris or Trump. I mean, we still have time before elections. We haven't seen them in debates. It's hard to measure Harris as a candidate if you haven't seen how they debate substantive issues, right? You know where they stand on those issues, but we haven't seen them in action. So in September, I think it will be clearer whose chances are growing. And if the Armenian side were to look at these elections and think in terms of various scenarios and what these scenarios mean for us, the most challenging scenario are going to be elections and the aftermath, especially if there's going to be a contested outcome of the elections in the U.S. or some protracted legal action or an uncertainty about who's going to be the next president. Imagine that kind of a scenario. Why I'm saying it's the worst outcome for Armenia, because there are players in the region who may want to make use of those kinds of foggy areas, right, in international relations, when there is no clear commitment from the major superpower on how to react to some of these challenges. They may take advantage of that. That should be the primary concern, I think, for us as a scenario.
Do you think that the presidential elections are being considered some kind of a milestone in the Armenia-Azerbaijani talks? Because this administration has dedicated a lot of attention span at the Secretary of State level to making some kind of an agreement happen. I'm just wondering if that is what's putting a sense of urgency in getting this agreement.
Well, they talk about the agreement, and they've been talking about the agreement ever since the end of the war.
Yeah.
And I remember in 21, we were told that in by December, there's going to be an agreement. And every year we hearing that we're so close. But, you know, as my experience as a negotiator suggests, listen to the sides, how they comment on not just the possibility of reaching the agreement, but what's the bone of contention right now. And even if the bone of contention is 10%, as the Armenian side presents the issue, right, we are almost in agreement on everything but 10%. Sometimes even 1%, if that's an important issue, can throw a monkey's wrench into the process, and you won't get any deal until that thorny issue is resolved one way or the other. But because we don't know, we can make assumptions about what those issues are, but we do not know exactly. We're not informed by our government necessarily what are they negotiating and what are the 10% that's the sticking point. I can say that even if one of my assumptions about where they are in disagreement is correct, we're not going to see the agreement anytime soon. And what are my assumptions about those sticky points? We can just put ourselves in Aliyev's shoes and look at what the list that he presents as his demands. And even if some of those demands are easy to, if not dismiss, then reject, for instance, his demand that Armenia change its constitution. All right. As a negotiator, I can see how the Armenian side could say, look, we're going to do that, but it's going to take time. It's not going to be easy to change the constitution. It will take a referendum. We don't know what's going to happen in that referendum, so it's going to take time. So that's not the condition that Aliyev is going to push as the top priority for him, I think. But there are other things that he is going to push as a top priority for him, and those are not just territorial. And the presence of European observers didn't change much in terms of his agreement to remove the troops from the territory that they occupied
inside Armenia.
Well, I mean, call it Armenia proper, or whatever term we want to use right now. And even if they say it's not demarcated yet, and therefore it's disputed, and therefore we are not leaving, it's obvious that it was occupied by them, right? And it was not an Azerbaijani territory. So there is the issue of the corridor, which he continues to push. And more, as far as I understand and as far as I know, they are ready from both sides already, from Nakhichevan and from the Azerbaijani side. The only missing link right now between these two is Sunik. So they've brought the roads to a point, and that missing link makes it impossible to connect. The project of Great Turan is hanging just on that missing link. Obviously, he and Erdogan continue to stress that they need to do something about it. And here, obviously, Pashinyan is trying to play different players, their interests, trying to find some kind of a space for him to postpone or even to reject the idea that it's going to be an exterritorial arrangement. But it doesn't mean that Azerbaijan is not going to continue to press for it. Now, why there's not going to be an agreement, I think, because it would not make sense for Aliyev to sign anything before he got everything that he demands. And he thinks that he can get those things. Why he thinks so? Because the Armenian side has given him that kind of a perception that Pashinyan, under pressure, will yield, will go for the challenging compromises, and will give more from the least of his demands. So why sign now? What's the rush for him? The rush is for the Armenian side and maybe for other players externally who would want to show that the problem is solved once and for all, but not for Azerbaijan. They are not in a rush. Moreover, they understand from the negotiation standpoint, they understand that the other side, that is Armenian side, declares, Pashinyan declares, that he depends on their goodwill. He wants peace, and that's a big goal, the agenda that he has, right? And then he pins the Armenian economic development on that peace and on opening communication and whatever with Turkey and Azerbaijan. And that's how he thinks Armenia will develop. He's ready to do things to make that happen. Now, if I'm Aliyev, again, looking at that and say, okay, great. You want peace? You want economic development? All of that is possible. But you have to do this, this, and this. And on that list, there is also the demand for Western Azerbaijan.
Yeah, there's no end to the demands.
Right, I mean, territorially, it's not the notion of even of what they mean by Western Azerbaijan. I mean, there are different maps that they use for that concept, and that's not the issue. The issue is resettlement of Azeris in the Armenian territory. I think that's a demand that they're going to continue also to press for. And no objections from the Armenian side will be accepted. If the Armenian side says that we also want Armenians to go back to Azerbaijan, they'd say, fine, let them come. But there will be no Armenians going there. And they already have the Azerbaijani resettlers organized. It's a state program there, unlike in Armenia, where it's just talk.
Arthur, since you're a negotiator, and this is a little bit of a digression, why wouldn't they make the numbers contingent on each other? For example, they say you can have X number of Azerbaijanis in Armenia if a number of Armenians go to Azerbaijan, but no more, right? If 10 Armenians go back to Baku and Sumgait, you can have 10 Azerbaijanis in Armenia.
Who should make that?
Well, yeah, our government doesn't do any kind of...
Are you suggesting that the Armenian side make that kind of a proposal?
Yeah.
Well, they might be making those kinds of proposals. I don't know. But if you listen carefully to what Aliyev is saying, he's saying, let's agree about principles first. And what would he mean by principle? And the principle will be that all those willing to return should be allowed to return. He's not going to go into the bargaining on the numbers, making some kind of conditionalities, how many Azeris, how many Armenians. No, he's going to press, and he's going to say that that demand is anointed by European values. If you Armenians want to be a European country, if you are truly democracy and for human rights, then you should say whoever wants to go should go. It's not like, I mean, you can force 10 people to go to Azerbaijan, or Azeris can press 10 people to come to Armenia. No, whoever wants to go will go. That's how they're going to be arguing about it. I'm sure that's how they're arguing about it. And the gist of that argument is that they, as a state, have a program, they prepare, they work with the people, and the Armenian side is doing nothing. Just talk. And even talk is very vague, right? I mean, what do you mean Armenians want to go back? We're not even talking about Armenians who should go back to Artsakh. Suddenly we'll be talking about Armenians going to Sumgait, Ganzak, and Baku. I mean, Shamkhor.
Yeah.
I don't see. I mean, if the Armenian side were serious about that, they would at least have some preparation done. They would at least know exactly how many people are out there. How many of these people? Where are they? I mean, are they in Russia? Are they in Ukraine? Are they in Uzbekistan? Where are these people? How many of them really would, under some conditions, would be willing to go to Azerbaijan? I doubt any work has been done. None. And the Azeri side is consistently doing the work. They have an agenda, they have a goal, and they work toward that goal. And that's the difference between a state, an authoritarian state, but a state, and a bunch of
a failed state.
Well, a bunch of
a mob.
Populists who talk and they have no agenda other than staying in power.
A few days ago, I believe it was yesterday or the day before, Erdogan made some waves in international news when he threatened to enter Israel.
Yeah.
Just like they did in Artsakh or Karabakh, he used the word Karabakh, and Libya. So he threatened Israel with the fate of Karabakh and Libya. And today, on July 30th, when this is being recorded, earlier in the day, another round of Turkish-Armenian negotiations were held by Ruben Rubinyan and his colleague Serdar Kılıç. This is after a 2-year break. If you remember, Pashinyan regime officials were presenting this situation in the negotiations as an accomplishment when they agreed in principle, that's 2 years ago, to open the border for citizens of third countries. And then nothing happened for more than 2 years. But after that sort of agreement in principle, Rubinyan followed up with rosy predictions that the border could be opened as early as summer of 2022. So after today's meeting, we also saw another, I think, generic statement, quote, reconfirming, unquote, previous agreements, and quote, re-emphasizing, unquote, to continue negotiations. So before we go into the substance of the negotiations or some of the questions, I have a question about negotiation tactics and how you communicate this. Why was Rubinyan painting such a rosy picture in 2022? Was he out of touch with reality, or it was a tactic to influence the opposite side or the Armenians? What was the reason for those rosy predictions? Especially knowing now that Erdogan said, until Aliyev gives the okay, we're not signing any agreement.
But that was obvious from the very beginning. I mean, it doesn't take experienced negotiator to analyze the structure of the negotiations you're in, right? You're negotiating with Turkey, but you're also negotiating with Azerbaijan because Azerbaijan on certain issues influences Turkey. And until they get green light from Baku on certain issues, they're not going to stir a finger. That was obvious from way back, and it's not much has changed. As to why Rubinian was doing that, I think I don't want to offend or get personal, but they all leave an impression of very incompetent people who present their wishful thinking for reality. I mean, look at how long they've been saying it's soon. It's in 2 months from now. We're going to have the agreement signed with Azerbaijan. We're so close. It's going to happen next month, 2 months from now, and it's not happening. Why are you saying that? What pushes you? I mean, the only thing that pushes them is the fact that it's tied to the agenda that they have presented to the Armenian nation. You're going to live well, Armenians, and you're going to live well because there's going to be peace and there's going to be economic development because we're going to be opening up to Turkey, Azerbaijan, and there's going to be even more money than from the re-export to Russia coming to Armenia. And you're going to live well. So if that's the picture, I'm trying to simplify the vision that they presented, right? With that hub, that Armenia will be sort of a hub for all sorts of goods going east and west and whatnot. If that's your vision, you want to show that these things are happening. You want it. You kind of falling into a trap that you yourself you have set it up. Because, as I said, neither Turkey nor Azerbaijan have a rush. Yes, they want that corridor. Yes, they've built the roads, everything is ready. But they are in no rush. It's not like, I mean, it's going to solve the issue that is a top priority for the two sides. No, it's a very important strategic long-term issue for the Great Turan, but it's not an issue for which they are ready to make concessions just to get it very quickly. Whereas the Armenian side has trapped itself with that vision of what they're doing in the region and how it's going to all go well for the Armenian nation after they are done with the peace agenda and then the economic development.
So maybe this is more about technicalities of negotiation, but why meet now? Is this a way for the Turkish side to appease Pashinyan, basically granting them the meeting, but effectively nothing will come out of it?
We don't have much information. We can speculate why now, what's happening. We need to understand the most important part here. And I think that part is made plenty clear to all those who observing the situation. And that is, Erdogan is not going to stir a finger until Aliyev says yes. And Aliyev is going to say, yes, do it when he gets what he wants from Armenia, especially that 10% that the Armenian side says is undecided yet. So these things are interconnected. It's not why now they've granted the meeting. Maybe it was scheduled a long time ago. I have no idea. And we don't know substantive. Yes, I'm sure that there are many Armenian political scientists who can tell you more about what's going on there, although nobody knows what's going on there, except the ones who are engaged in the process. And that's Pashinyan and a few of his men who are negotiating with Turks. Obviously, I mean, the Middle Eastern agenda for Turkey, especially if this escalation now, the second round of escalation now is going to get Lebanon involved and Hezbollah involved. It's kind of maybe too hot to stay for Turkey to stay out. But his rhetoric, aside, I mean, he's been saying all sorts of things about Israel, but essentially on economic interests, on trade and other stuff, we haven't seen really much of an impact. So it's one thing to go to Rize, where you have these Turkish nationalists listening and tell them things that they want to hear from you. It's another thing when it comes to policy, when you really need to make steps. He didn't say that he's going to do that. He said, I mean, if it's a correct translation from Turkish, he said, maybe we should do something like we did in Karabakh and Libya. Maybe, maybe not. And why not recall Syria and Iraq? That too, he crossed the internationally recognized borders and nothing happened. The process of negotiations now with Ankara is also related to what's going on with the negotiations in Baku. I cannot say, but most likely they are somehow interconnected. There is nothing that may be happening at those negotiations. They just sit down and talk over and over about the positions and over again, clarifying where the sides stand, and then they go back to where they were.
So is it more of a public relations stunt, maybe?
If there were something substantive happening, I think they're so eager to see it. And that is Pashinyan and his team. They'd be already trumpeting that, yes, we have another breakthrough with Turkey. And in 2 months, they are opening the border again. We're ready with the what they were calling the dry port of the economics minister, right? I mean, Gyumri, we're ready for opening up communications and doing whatever is necessary. And there may be also some pressure from the U.S. because the U.S., the administration also needs to tell American Armenians that they are engaged in very active diplomacy. Nothing is happening. But for the Armenian community, they will be saying, yes, we're making Zhingalov huts in Yerevan. We are already having Turks now again reopen conversations. You have to be patient, Armenians. Vote for us and be patient. That's it.
Okay, I wanted to take a little bit of a break from the current issues, given that we're talking about Erdogan's boasting about Karabakh. And I wanted to take our listeners back to 2020, when the 44-day war started on the morning of September 27, 2020. It was initiated by massive use of firepower around the entire line of contact, but more specifically, it became known afterwards that during the first hours, many important military targets, including important air defense targets, were immediately taken out. At least that's the analysis of some analysts. And many analysts claim, or some analysts claim, that this accurate knowledge of exactly what targets to hit represents a significant intelligence accomplishment, and that in and of itself could have been a determining factor in the war. Of course, where I'm leading to is trying to gauge Turkey's role and your understanding of Turkey's role and how significant it was for the war in Artsakh. Could the war in Artsakh be such a victory for Azerbaijan without Turkish overt involvement? We know about Turkish generals stationed in Azerbaijan. We know that there has special forces. And of course, we know that at least part of the war could have been governed from AWACS aircraft flying over Turkey close to the border. There's a lot of evidence, but despite all of that, Azerbaijan Monday denied that Turkey had any military support and said Turkey's support is only political. So in your assessment, how important was Turkey's involvement in the Artsakh war, and could that involvement have been prevented?
I think it was critical. And I don't think without the agreement between Baku and Ankara, Aliyev would have started the war. The problem we have, again, I mean, is that we do not engage in serious lessons learned, right? Because if we were engaged in the serious lessons learned, there'd be answers to your question, direct answer to your question, and a detailed one, and probably coming from the best military analysts. But instead of running a thorough third-party independent investigation to learn from the process, the ruling party ran its own investigation and essentially came with no answers to more than 100 questions that still remain unanswered, right? We can speculate about those things. We know some of the facts, some of the Turkish participation, and you named it, and I'm not even mentioning the military equipment and Bayraktars and how they were operated and intelligence and many other aspects of the Turkish support of the war effort, and including planning, which is the most probably important aspects of any military operations. So the Turkish, some of the best generals were planning with Azeris. They were giving them the plan of action. So yes, I think it will be very hard to over-exaggerate the Turkish role in all of this.
Yeah.
Why it happened, and why it was condoned, why the West and Europeans, even now when Erdogan essentially brags about it, there is dead silence. I mean, it's okay, right, to intervene militarily in a conflict situation that is being mediated by the United States, France, and Russia. So
right.
They have that kind of a carte blanche to act in that area. Yes, they did, because there were other interests that they took care of all three major players, and that allowed them to intervene. And they've been doing that wherever there is an opportunity. They use that opportunity. As I said, he mentioned only Libya, but he could speak about Syria. He can speak about Iraq too.
Yeah.
I mean, forget about Cyprus. I mean, it's who speaks now about Cyprus, right?
Yes.
So
right. In fact, just recently there was the 50th anniversary.
50 years of occupation, 50 years of trampling on European values, international law, and it's okay. They can get away with that. Turkey knows how to get away. They're masters of that, beginning from Lausanne and maybe before, I'm not even going into that. They're masters of avoiding responsibility for violating international law. I don't want to talk about the genocide, obviously.
Yeah, frankly, I always get into this argument, not being a military expert, not being an expert in a sort of military analysis even, but just the fact that, for instance, Azerbaijan has 2 satellites, Turkey has 21 satellites. Turkey, as part of NATO, has access to hundreds of satellites. And I always wonder if one wanted to prove, whether NATO equipment was used to determine super accurately all of the Armenian positions and essentially guarantee the outcome of the war in the first 15 minutes. How would one do that investigation, and how would one prove it? I don't have an answer to that, even if we had a government that wanted to do that, like you're saying. This government just wants to cover it up and spin it as much in their favor as possible.
It's very difficult now because we don't even have access to Karabakh now, right? But there was access to Karabakh until last year, September, right? We had access, not to all territories, but we had access. No, I think there are military experts who can, those should be independent military experts, not the ones hired by the government, not from their political party. Look, when in Norway, they had this terrible terrorist attack by Breivik, they had investigation into the case. And the investigation was by a third party. They invited even the Finns, their neighbors, to participate in the investigation. Why? Because they wanted to learn what happened so that they can avoid in future anything like that. They wanted to learn lessons from it. The Armenian
Right
side
now, there's a
doesn't want to
desire
learn
not to
anything.
learn.
They want to cover up. They want to
Right.
cover up, and that's the answer to the question. Military experts, if, for instance, some military assets, were hit on the Armenian territory, they can figure out what kind of weapons were used to hit it. If they know what kind of weapons, they would know what precision systems and targeting systems they use. Are they connected to satellites? Some of the military experts can even dig deeper and understand which, if not specific satellite, what kind of satellite could have provided that connection and information. So it's not an impossible task. It's about willing to do that. The ruling party just wants the Armenian people to believe in their version of what happened. They still have some of these generals under investigation. These are the scapegoats. We lost the war because of these generals. But in fact, we lost the war because the previous regime were not doing well. That's what they want to tell us. And that's what their investigation, obviously, should demonstrate. Whereas, in fact, yes, there may be some truth to that. But they have, I would even say, lion's share responsibility because it was under their watch that it happened.
Okay, you are listening to the Groong podcast. Hovik, let's take a quick break to thank our listeners for their support so far, and also remind that we truly appreciate the many supporters we have signed up as sustaining members. Go to podcasts.groong.org/donate and help us out.
I would say it's very rare to find someone with the background and education like we have with today's guest, and be able to regularly bring them in front of our Anglophone audience. If you find value in this, then why not help us out and help increase our reach and help cover our costs for that? Podcasts.groong.org/donate is the link. And that'll be also a signal that we are being heard, and you want more of this. So, and we have some, I would say, worldwide known names coming up this fall, and we're always on the lookout for new people to talk about Armenia, and especially non-Armenian faces and names. So help us out by just getting our content in front of more people. Podcasts.groong.org/donate.
That's right. That remains our goal, to reach more Armenians, both in the Republic and the diaspora, as well as anybody who is involved and interested in Armenian life around the world. Podcasts.groong.org/donate. We hope we will see you in our supporting groups. Back again to our week in review with Arthur G. Martirosyan. Okay, so as we're talking about military preparedness, the Eagle Partner 2024 military exercises ended recently, and there's been a lot of government propaganda about upgraded defense ties between the US and Armenia, the intentions to raise them to a so-called quote-unquote strategic level, and the US intent to station a military advisor inside the Armenian Ministry of Defense.
Yes.
Arthur, what was the value realized by each side from these exercises? Is Armenia better able to defend itself because of these exercises?
I don't think it, in terms of military preparedness, I mean, these exercises, as far as I understand, have long been part of the routine work related to peacekeeping. Right? So these are about peacekeeping operations. And they can talk about strategic partnership and whatnot, all that nonsense. But the essence of it is obvious. The essence is to, again, stick it to Russians and to show the Russians that we do have an alternative. The European observers are here on the ground. Americans are running exercises with us. We're going to be able to survive without you because we have an alternative. And soon we're going to get all the weapons from India and France, and it's going to be a great preparedness for war. But Russians are not stupid, you know. This kind of a move, changing strategy and strategic partnership, takes decades. It cannot be done very quickly, especially if you consider logistics, right? Of delivering all sorts of weapons and whatnot, and then teaching the personnel. I mean, one of the problems in Ukraine right now is not that they did train, they had a crash course for the pilots of F-16s. Okay, they have a group of pilots who can fly an F-16. How well, I mean, let's leave it as an open question.
Yeah, and the word crash course is a bit ironic as well.
But the most difficult part is not even them. That damn thing requires a lot of technicians on the ground to work on it before it flies, when it comes back. It's a lot of work, and work by technicians who understand it. They know the language, they can work with it. It's not like, I mean, you just take one thing and it will solve all your problems. It's not working that way. But they are trying to feed the population with those nonsense stories. Daily, I can see daily, they have political scientists who talk about the huge success. What's the success? Since European observers have been in Armenia, there hasn't been a single case of Azeris taking more of Armenian territory, except that the territory was given to Azeris just recently.
Right.
It's in the terminology.
And,
given versus taken.
The observers were okay with that. This nonsense needs to stop. The European observers haven't done anything to say to Azerbaijan, hey, what are you doing? You have taken territory of a sovereign state. Move your troops out. Can they do that? Can they say that? No, they cannot. Why they cannot? I mean, read the newspapers. I mean, the European Union and Ukraine have appealed to Aliyev that he negotiate with Russians on prolongation of the natural gas transportation deal with Russia that expires by the end of this year. You understand the real interest, right? When I'm not talking about that, and and they're talking about some observers who former military or maybe even now intelligence. God knows what they're doing on the Armenian territory, but they have to sell it. They have to sell it to us that this is an increase in the security.
Yeah, unfortunately, for the Europeans, it's all about gas. In the case of Azerbaijan, it's natural gas. In the case of Armenia, it's just hot air blowing out of the European mission mouthpieces.
And the funny thing is, Hovik, that a lot of this gas is actually re-exported Russian gas, right? It's so that Europe can say that they are not consuming Russian gas. And so it's the re-exports through Azerbaijan so they can say this is Azerbaijani gas. I mean, the level of hypocrisy is amazing.
It is, but then, you know, what's also amazing is the level of propaganda that pro-Europeans try to present this as some kind of a security guarantee. I mean, I think we should be realistic for our listeners. And thank you, Arthur, for once again highlighting that cynical aspect of European policy.
No, but logically, it's the other extreme, right? I mean, the ones who believe that Russia is a solution to our security, a mistake, right? And another extreme of it is Europe is the answer to our security.
Indeed.
It's just, it doesn't really matter, I mean, where you stand. I mean, if you approach the issue analytically, you understand the fallacy of that stance.
Yeah. Arthur, one comment that I wanted to make is that in this last round of exercises of the Eagle 2024, many analysts were pointing out that the drills are more about police-style crowd control rather than military or national defense. As a matter of fact, if you look at who participates in that from the U.S. side, it's the Kansas National Guard, which is not a war machine, as you know.
No.
So enough said about that.
No, but it
I
sounds
wanted
very
to
serious when it's Armenian.
That's right, it does.
National
To the Armenian
television, they
population.
talk about this boys from Kansas, the National Guard. I mean, they're gonna teach you Armenians military tactics and the state of the art new weaponry.
Arthur, after the exercises, Louis Bono stopped by Yerevan just a couple of days ago. I think it was over the weekend, to follow up on the Armenian-Azeri discussions in DC about 3 weeks ago, July 10th. There were no reported agreements from that July 10th meeting between, I think, was it the Pashinyan and Aliyev, except that the U.S. made clear afterwards.
Mirzoyan and
was it Mirzoyan? Yeah, between Mirzoyan and Bayramov, was it? Yeah.
Because Pashinyan refused to meet. Well, I mean, they claim that it was.
We don't know who. Right. Yeah, we don't know who,
London,
according to the reports.
Meeting didn't happen.
That's right. So one thing that did happen is that the U.S. Afterwards made clear of their expectations for, quote, tough compromises, unquote, from both sides. Can you explain what tough compromises are being expected by the U.S. from Armenia and Azerbaijan?
That's a common rhetoric of a mediator. I mean, they understand that the deal is probably going to be very challenging. And so that to show that they are working very hard on getting it, they have to say that the sides have to make very tough compromises. And if the deal is not happening, it's not because of us mediators. It's because the sides are not making the tough compromises. But in reality, I mean, I haven't heard any U.S. Official come to Yerevan and be very specific about what is it that they want to see happen. So what compromises the sides need to make. It's a very vague, obfuscated statement about the need to make compromises. Nor I have heard Americans come and speak on the basis of our values, right? And say things about human rights violations by Azerbaijan. You know, they play games, but the games are so crude. When Samantha Power was in Yerevan, apart from making Zhingalov huts, she met also Secretary of National Security Council. Okay, that
Armen Grigoryan.
So she met with him. What does the Armenian television tell the population? That they met and they talked about the Armenian refugees who are in Armenia now because of ethnic cleansing. That's on television. But we haven't heard Samantha Power or any other American official come and say those things. The ambassador to Baku, who is new and whom I knew when he was a very young guy, by the way, at Fletcher. He initially took a very kind of obviously based on American values stance. He's not going to Shushi. Okay. But then something happened, and we know what happens, right? Baku talks to State Department, and the State Department talks to the ambassador, and the ambassador goes to Shushi and talks nonsense there about the how the U.S. wants to see peace and prosperity there. This is how it works. I mean, and that's very cynical, but that's what it is, you know. And we're trying to go beyond some of the cliches and formulas used by a diplomat. He's coming. He needs to show activity. Why they need to show the activity, I already told you why. Because that will be the conversation with you guys, especially in Armenians who live in important states in the U.S. for the elections. We are doing a lot of good work. There is progress. We cannot talk about it now, but the sides are committed to peace. And yes, we have done a lot of good work. Be patient. The Armenian government has a good vision about how to get to peace and prosperity, and we are there to help them. Yeah.
Let's come back to Aliyev's threats of war. compounded by the 10 million that the EU allocated for Armenia from the European Peace Facility, the US-Armenian exercises provided an opportunity for Aliyev to again threaten Armenia with war. Azerbaijan perceived the pitiful crowd control joint exercises between the US and Armenia, as well as the 10 million euro field hospital provided by the EU as a threat, and said that it will act in self-defense if these continue. And Azerbaijani diplomats say this with a straight face, while their army is, increasing its military budget every year to the tune of billions of dollars. So the threats continued until this Monday, until yesterday, when Azerbaijan accused Armenia of yet again flying a quadcopter over its positions in Tovuz, and this is bordering Tavush essentially. And of course, this was also immediately denied by Armenia. We talked a lot about all of these things during the show already, but specifically about this increased frequency of Azerbaijani threats. What can you tell us about this, Arthur? What is the goal of Azerbaijan? Obviously, we know that Armenia is in no position to fight a war with Azerbaijan. And we know all of this is, to be frank, bullshit. So what is Azerbaijan's real goal in increasing the frequency of these threats of war and these false reports?
Well, I think we essentially talked about that already. I mean, they're negotiating and they're not getting what they want to get. They say the alternative is we're going to get it by war. If you don't give it to us at the table, negotiating with us, the alternative is going to be through the war. And they need to make that threat credible because they know that it works with Pashinyan. Right? And then all of a sudden, the Armenian Foreign Affairs Ministry makes a statement that they, based on some Western analysis, the likelihood of war in November increases, blah, blah, blah. I mean, first of all, I haven't seen the report. I don't know who made the report and what specifically they are referring to. But it's very strange when your Foreign Affairs Ministry is making those statements, right? It's almost like, they are working as the loudspeaker for for Azerbaijan. They amplify the demand from Azerbaijan. Okay, Azerbaijan is threatening with war. Armenians don't do anything internally disrupting the stability of the country because there is this external threat. Okay, yeah. One. Number two, why, if there is some kind of legitimate intelligence, why that statement is not made by defense or security agencies of Armenia, right? Why Foreign Affairs Ministry should be telling us that there is some kind of report that they have read and the likelihood is high. As I said, Aliyev's style of negotiation is known. He's threatening with war, that's his alternative, and is trying to make the threat credible because he knows that these threats work with Pashinyan. Pashinyan is going to give him more if he makes the threat credible. Therefore, he continues to talk about, if not by negotiation, then by war, I will get what I want. Is it really possible? I personally don't think that Azerbaijan is going to be ready to engage in anything without getting a clear sense that, A, they're going to get away with it, right? And major centers of power, international power, are going to be okay with that. And that's why I was saying that for us, the uncertainty in the US may present to Aliyev the situation as if something were possible, right? We'll do it and then we'll talk to whoever is in president's office in the US. Yeah, that's one dangerous scenario. I'm not saying I'm ruling out the war, but I'm saying the likelihood. You have to follow the likelihood, and you need to have indicators to analyze what's happening with the likelihood. I would say the likelihood is not very high right now. Why? Because Aliyev has been getting everything he wanted to get. And the problem, if he's not getting something right now, from that 10% not negotiated is not because Pashinyan is not willing to give. Pashinyan is willing to give whatever he is asking. The problem is the internal dynamics in Armenia. They saw that there is a serious potential, a protest potential, and social mobilization is again possible. So they're playing what in our books of strategy is known as the slicing salami. Okay, we cut a piece, we gave that small piece. We cannot give everything right away, right? The whole package. So here is a slice, we give it to you, let them calm down, then we'll give you the next slice, the next slice. And it has been working. Why should they give up on that strategy?
And Arthur, you mentioned regional actors and external powers in the context of, the appetite for Azerbaijan for another war adventure. But speaking about the other regional power and international power, Russia, Russia also has continued with stern warnings, cautioning Armenia from following the Ukraine scenario.
Yes.
In the context of these joint military exercises, as well as the French acquisition of French weapons and so forth. What can you tell us about the Russian calculus in all of this?
Oh, it's obvious that it's not a top priority for them, what's happening in Armenia. They satisfying one of the important interests through Armenia, because as someone knowledgeable about those issues involved in as a company in logistics and transportation is telling me jokingly that every Armenian family in the last year purchased at least 5 or 6 refrigerators, right? So yes, the re-export is on the rise. It's good for Russians. There is lots of money that sticks to various hands in Armenia, people who are involved in that re-export. So that stuff is happening. And Armenia is not getting sanctioned. And not to get sanctioned, they need to show that they are taking very anti-Russian steps, and they're playing anti-Russian rhetoric. And then the Russians respond to that, all those moves. And it's from outside looks very credible, right? All that is happening. But the minute they make a step or announce a step that is not coordinated or is not known to Russians, and Russians make a stern warning, they pull back, right? Because it was the case with the referendum about EU, right? That is crazy nonsense idea. And I think Pashinyan himself understood how he can trap himself if he says, yes, we're going to have a referendum now on whether Armenians want to be European Union members or not. What if you do? What if 90% of the population says yes? So what? It's not happening. And what? Number two, and this is a more serious problem for him, what if the turnout were lower than 50%, as it has been in the recent elections, and if only less than half of the people vote for EU? What do you do then? I mean, it's nonsense. But Moscow made a very stern warning, and they immediately pulled back. I think the Russian strategy is obvious. They want to make sure that they have the issue not so much with Ukraine, although there is an issue there to be solved, but with the West settled. A new modus vivendi should be found somehow, negotiated, just like between Nixon and Brezhnev. I don't know, or whatever the deals historically you can look into when the sides had to agree on something. Otherwise, potentially they stand to lose much more from the confrontation.
Yeah.
So for them, it's not a top priority what's happening in Armenia, and they have this. I think it's a mistaken. It's the imperial illusion that they can always get back when it's necessary. But there is no conversation about Russian border guards being moved from the border with Turkey and Iran, right? No. There is no conversations about the Russian base being removed. No. So it's a kind of a rhetoric game, but not nothing on substance really threatens their interests yet.
Yeah, the way I look at it, Russia is dealing with the big rocks first, and then they'll worry about the small pebbles
Right, they have
later.
bigger fish to fry.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap up our topics here, Arthur. For now, I'd like to ask each of you if there's something on your mind for the past week or two that you would like to talk about. Hovik, last week, I found you speechless. I'm not sure what happened there, but what do you want to share this week?
I'm just going to skip to the Asbed if you don't mind.
Again?
Yes.
You should spare a couple of your tweets for this show.
Well, I can tell you this. I think that it was interesting that when Louis Bono came to Armenia this time, the Armenian foreign, I believe either the foreign ministry or the Security Council put out an announcement omitting that he is also the US representative from the OSCE Minsk group. In all previous announcements, they have specifically highlighted that fact that the US representative from the OSCE Minsk group is coming. And we all know that recently Azerbaijan has also put out a threat or put out a demand that Armenia and Azerbaijan should jointly go to the OSCE and demand the disbandment of the OSCE Minsk group. So I thought it was interesting about that quote-unquote coincidence. So see what you made me do, Asbed, talk more negative stuff.
There you go. Arthur, what's on your mind?
Well, I think I was reading the FBI confirmed that there was really a bullet that pierced Trump's ear. And I was thinking about the things like that may have long-lasting impact on various developments historically. Not too many know that in 1926, an Irish woman shot at Mussolini in Rome, and the bullet, because he jerked his head, the bullet went very close to his nose, didn't hit the nose, but scratched it somehow. He was lucky enough to survive. So, could the world history change because of the couple of millimeters? Yes, I mean, we know those things, but on a more serious note, I think the developments in Lebanon, it's a kind of a new wave of escalation, and we don't know where the sides, right? Are they going to stop, or it's really now going to escalate to engage not just Hezbollah, but those who stand behind Hezbollah, which will have immediate ramifications for us and the region, the Caucasus region. Anyway, let's hope not. Let's hope that somehow they're going to manage to stay out of further escalation, but it's something that really concerns me.
Thank you. On my part, I just wanted to say a couple of words as I've been watching the Olympics, that I'm full of wonder when these Olympic Commission members or country leaders can stand up with a straight face to the world and say that at least during these 2 weeks of the Olympics, we are one world and we can all speak with one idea. And yet I see that they have, for example, excluded Russia. And I thought, well, of course, if you exclude all the voices that you disagree with, everyone in the tent will be people that you agree with by definition. Yeah. And also the second point I want to make is about the hypocrisy of excluding Russia and yet allowing countries like Azerbaijan and Israel be members of the current and ongoing Olympics when they are conducting their own ethnic cleansings. All right, let's leave it there for today. Thank you, Arthur, for joining us.
Thank you.
We appreciate your time.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you, Arthur.
Take care.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
That was our Week in Review show, recorded on July 30, 2024. We've been talking with Arthur G. Martirosyan, who is a senior consultant with CM Partners. In 1994, after graduating from Yale University, he joined Conflict Management Group and Harvard Negotiations Project and has since worked on conflicts in the former Soviet Union, the Middle East, the Balkans, Africa, and Latin America. Please remember to support us. Go to our donate page, podcasts.groong.org/donate, and consider buying us a coffee, or better yet, become a sustaining member of Groong and give monthly. Thank you in advance. Please remember to support us. Go to our donate page, podcasts.groong.org/donate, and consider buying us a coffee, or better yet, become a sustaining member of Groong and give monthly. Thank you in advance.